Um, so defining a funding round is broadly in a number of steps. So it's all in step one, and within that, there are a number of sliders on the platform where you define different parts of the funding round and company. So the first is round specific, and if you scroll to the bottom, you can see there's a further 6 items. There's 7 in total. We're going to walk through each of these individually and talk through what the settings mean. The first is very, very kind of high level general stuff on the company. Some of these further items down here really dive into the weeds. So we're talking very esoteric, very specific points relating to the funding round. But let's walk through round specifics initially, and then we'll walk back through the other sections as well. So the first item on round specific is around, do you want to generate paperwork for a specific investor? This is really useful if you have a named investor who is in this list here. So if you're taking money from, Angel Investors Bristol or Fuel or SFC, whoever it happens to be, you would select that specific investor type in the window here. And a couple of things happen if you do that. So let's click on Fuel Ventures, for example. You can see then that some of the items on the platform are locked. So Fuel Ventures have told us that they have very specific requirements of the paperwork. If they're going to invest in you, then they will want your paperwork to be balanced, for example. So you get no choice other than to choose balance. That setting is gone, and whatever Fuel has mandated appears there. Of course, if you don't agree with that setting and you're not going to accept it, you can walk away from Fuel. But if you want their investment, then you either need to accept that setting, or at least you need to go and negotiate with them so they can change it. It's worth mentioning at this stage, if you select a specific investor type like Fuel Ventures, then there may be some other paperwork that changes in your documentation. So it's not just settings that are changed here. Sometimes there will be some other, usually very minor settings that change throughout the documentation to be specific to that investor. For the rest of this session, we're going to assume that we don't have a specific investor type because it locks parts of the functionality away that I want to show you. For most people, no, I don't want a specific, this is the generic, I just want normal paperwork. The second choice here is around the balance of the paperwork on the platform. And broadly, there are 3 choices here. There's founder friendly, there's investor friendly, or there's balanced. My very strong recommendation would be to select balanced here. Maybe if you're doing a family and friends round, then then you would get away with having founder-friendly paperwork. Most sophisticated investors would identify that you've selected founder-friendly and would push back, and it's just a awkward way to start negotiation, really. So for virtually all scenarios, we would recommend you choosing balanced. And again, if an investor's not forcing you to select investor-friendly, then I wouldn't go out of my way to select that. Without an investor insisting upon it. We do have, there's a link just above that item, which walks through in quite some detail the settings that are changed when you change that from founder friendly to balanced to investor friendly. For 99% of our customers, they remain on balanced, and for, I think that is entirely the right choice. Pre-money valuation, I'm not going to dive into this too much. This is the valuation of your company pre-funding. So sometimes people get confused. There's 2 different values you could put here. One's your pre-money, one's your post-money. Broadly, your post-money is your pre-money valuation plus the investment. So I don't know, if you're raising $500,000 at a 1.5 million valuation, then your pre-money would be 1.5 million, your post-money would be 2 million. The problem with talking post-money at this stage is you really don't understand what your post money is going to be, because you don't know if you're going to raise exactly 500,000 or you're going to raise 400,000 or 600,000. So at this stage, your pre-money valuation shouldn't change, but your post-money may change depending on the dynamics of your funding round. The next item is advisory only. So this is indicating to your investment what the minimum ticket size is. So if you don't want to deal with hundreds of people on your cap table, you may say a minimum ticket size for this funding round is £5,000. And it's just telling your investors, it's indicating to your investors, you're not going to accept an investment of £4,000 or whatever. Now, actually, in reality, the platform doesn't enforce this. So if you do find somebody who wants to put £2,500 in and you agree, then the platform isn't going to prevent you. It is really the purpose of this is putting an indication on the term sheet rather than enforcing the funding round in any real way. The next is a minimum aggregate investment amount, or what is the minimum you're going to raise. And again, this is an indication rather than being mandatory. So the platform doesn't enforce this today. So if you say we're going to raise £150,000, for example, and if you close the funding round at £100,000, so you've finished shy of your goal, the platform isn't going to stop you from doing that. And as long as all of your investors are happy that you've raised less than your minimum amount, then the funding round will close as normal. The platform's not going to prevent you from doing that. Again, the next item is maximum aggregate investment amount in this round. This indicates how much you're going to raise as a maximum in this funding round. Again, the platform doesn't enforce this. So if you say it currently says £250,000, if at the last minute when you're about to close your funding round, somebody commits another £50,000 on top of the 250, so you get £300,000 committed, the platform is absolutely not going to prevent you from locking the funding round. And it's up to each of your investors to decide whether they accept that or not. But yeah, the platform, this is kind of advisory within the term sheet again only. The next button is hopefully self-explanatory, but is EIS available? You tick this if EIS is available within your current funding round. So for whatever reason, if your business isn't SEIS, EIS compatible, or if you've used all your EIS or whatever, then you would indicate no here. If you do intend on issuing EIS shares, then you would indicate yes on this screen here. The next item is exactly the same for SEIS. So is SEIS available? If you intend on offering SEIS within this funding round, then select yes. If you've already used all your SEIS, or if you're out of time for using SEIS, or you're not eligible for whatever other reason, you would select no here. But for most businesses who are offering SEIS, you'd absolutely click yes. The next item, do you have advance assurance? You would select this if you are offering SEIS and or EIS and you've received advance assurance from HMRC. If you're in that awkward phase where you know you want to offer SEIS, EIS, but you haven't yet had the response back from HMRC, or you've not built your advance assurance submission, then you would just indicate this as no at this stage. The next item is proposed round close date. Again, this is advisory rather than mandatory. This is where you would indicate, we intend on closing the funding round on whatever the date is. If I try and save this form right now, the platform's going to complain because we're indicating a date which is in the past. So we will say we intend on closing the round on the 1st of December. The platform is not going to stop you from closing a funding round either before the 1st of December if you manage to do that, if you close your round earlier, or if the round drags on into January or whatever. Again, the platform isn't going to complain too much other than potentially on this screen, but it's not going to prevent you from closing the funding round. The next section, so the next four boxes are all around agile fundraising. So these four boxes are all relating to any fundraising you want to raise in an agile funding round after this funding round is closed. But so it's got nothing to do with what you're closing now. It's about an potential agile fundraise, which happens after you close this funding round. And, lots of people say, well, I'm going to reduce this to 0 and we don't want this. Honestly, it gives you more flexibility to leave, even if you don't use it, and maybe if you don't intend on using it, it gives you more flexibility. This is a founder-friendly thing to do, to leave the door open, just in case you close this funding round and somebody turns up and says, great, I want to put another £50,000 in at the same valuation. If you've left Agile open, you can make use of it by opening an Agile funding round. If you haven't, then you need to jump through some additional admin hoops to do that. So this is a good thing from a founder point of view, even if you're not sure if you'll need it or not. So the first thing you indicate here is how much you're fundraising, and we'll say, right, we're going to raise £300,000, for example. You put the minimum price per share, and already the platform has calculated the current price per share in the current funding round. And then under here, it's worked out that in order to raise £300,000 at the current share price, it's this many shares. So it's kind of done the hard yards on calculating the maths. And then you need to indicate to your to the people signing the shareholders agreement when the agile deadline will close. So we know when we intend on closing the current funding round here, and we can say, well, actually, we intend on closing the agile. We're going to do it on the, I don't know, 1st of October 2026, maybe. So the three protections for your investors when they're signing the shareholder agreement under the agile authorization are firstly, within the shareholders agreement, broadly, we are saying once we have closed this funding round that you're signing off, the founders are also allowed to raise up to £300,000 at a minimum share price of 98.81, blah, 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 up until the 1st of October 2026. So, and the reason why those three parameters matter for me as an investor, firstly, as an investor, I want to know the maximum you can raise under this agile authorization. If you're doing an initial round of 150 and you then say, I want to raise up to 3 million under agile, well, that's going to have a really dilutive effect on me as a potential investor. So actually, that's unreasonable. I want to bound how much you can raise in agile. I don't want it to be kind of open-ended. Secondly, I want to make sure that the minimum share price within the agile funding round is no less than what I've paid. If I've already paid £98.81, I don't want you selling shares after that to somebody who's following on in an agile funding round. So that's a protection for me as an investor again. And then I want a kind of end date on when I can sell those agile shares until. What I don't want as somebody authorizing this agile round is, you can raise for the next 5 years at exactly the same share price that this funding round close at, because in theory, at least, the share price over time should be increasing. You should be spending the amount, you as a founder should be spending the money that was raised in order to further the business over that time. So that's why there's a deadline on how long agile can be used. So those three things, the total number of shares to be issued, the minimum share price, and the date the agile round close, are very standard protections for investors and other shareholders that are about to sign off this shareholder agreement. The last item on this page is whether you want to create a employee share option plan or an unallocated option pool, as also known. If you do want to do that and you're doing it either during or after a funding round, you can select that here. So you can say, right, we want the authority to create an unallocated option pool of up to 15%. You don't need to use this setting. So if you're creating an option pool before the funding round, which lots of investors will insist you do, then you don't need to use this as well. You just create a 10% before and then leave this empty.